The East. What's up with that? This episode of the Shootaround is all about the Eastern Conference, from the undefeated Cavaliers at the top, all the way down to the bottom and all of the mediocrity in between. But before we answer that, there's one other question we have to address. In-season tournament. Do we care about it? Or is this still just a little gimmick that is features painted courts and nothing more?
I feel like we're going to need to do a couple of years of this before we really feel it out, because I remember kind of going back and forth on the play-in tournament for like the first 3 years of it. And then since then, I'm like, yeah, it's just only excellent. I feel like I'm probably going to do the same thing with this.
I think it only rules. And I've seen a lot of commentary on like the courts and how they look like 2K courts, which I mean, to an extent, I agree. But if the players are like, hey, this is kind of fun, and like it creates a different atmosphere, because like to Jacob's point, I think what you're right about is it will take a few years for it to kind of like settle in with people. But I don't think that means that it sucks right now, because by the time we got to the championship in Vegas last year, like people were like, wait a minute, this actually feels like high stakes basketball in the middle of December. Like this is really fun. And the players like clearly cared about it. So I think from a tradition standpoint and like people really getting up for it before it actually starts, yeah, for sure. That'll take a few years. Because like otherwise it was just kind of like, oh, the in-season tournament started. Like that's cool, but like there's no content leading into it. You know what I mean? Like nobody's talking about. Well, actually, there's a mental exercise. Do you think there will ever be a day? Let's go down to 2030. Let's say structurally that the in-season tournament is still the same thing. Do you think people? Is this something that can ever have content made about it in advance? Like look out for this team heading into the in-season tournament. Because it's just kind of like they're just playing games. You know what I mean?
I mean, the Lakers winning it last year is indicative that you don't necessarily have to be like one of the best teams to win it. It's like a different set of circumstances. I don't know. I also think we need the time to pass to properly evaluate how much stock we place in it in terms of like how much of an accomplishment it even is. Because like when the Lakers won it last year, I was like, I don't know how to feel about what the significance of this is in the moment. You know, how much are we going to, obviously it's never going to reach the same level of value as a championship, but you know, where does that scale in the long term? I think we have to see more and more of them before we actually have an answer to that.
Yeah, but isn't that, go ahead, Rudy, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like any content that would surround the in-season tournament prior to it actually getting started would just be like reskinned early season / preseason content, right? Because basically we're 1/8 through the season and now it's officially beginning. By the time it's done, we'll be another 1/8 through the season, more or less. And then the second half of the season already has the weight that it has. So I don't think it'd be so much revolutionary new angles about the in-season tournament and this, that, and the third. It'd just be sort of like a more incentivized, higher stakes coverage of what we are already saying during this part of the NBA calendar.
For sure. And I think just to Jacob's point about like, you know, how do we ever measure, like, how do we quantify how meaningful this actually is? Well, is that not kind of just a reflection of what our expectations are and just the lens that we look at things through? Like that to me has like, it's intrinsically rangs culture. Like, well, this is not a real fucking championship, so who cares? Did you have fun watching it? That's, you know what I mean? Like, was it like did it again feel like semi-high stakes basketball in the middle of, because I think that's the piece of it that is going to need to be tweaked eventually. Is sure, the cash incentive is cool. That's for the players though. You know, what you don't want to do is turn it into, you know, for so many years the MLB All-Star game determined home field advantage for the World Series. That's insane. Like eventually people were like, this fucking sucks. And then they did away with that because that does not make any sense and that's not fair at all. So you don't want to do something like that where you like overcorrect for how important this otherwise inconsequential event needs to be. But I do think like some people have kicked around, like maybe you get draft compensation or maybe how do I, it's not this, it's not this. But like you win the in-season tournament, and wherever you finish in the standings, you get to jump 5 picks. Not that, but like, you know what I mean? Like something like that. So I'm judging faces on the panel. Doesn't seem like that's moving the needle for you guys.
I'm just not a fan of like the guys on the team playing to supply their potential replacements. They don't really have an incentive to add a draft pick to their team unless they're just like 40 chessing it. There's no natural incentive from a purely selfish perspective for an NBA player to go as hard as possible if the only thing they're playing for real, besides a little bit of extra money, I guess, is to get your team a better draft pick. Like, no one cares about playing with, I don't know, the 5th best player in the draft, allegedly, instead of the 10th best player in the draft, allegedly, especially when that guy is, like, at your position. Like, let's say you're, the weakest starter on your team, and you're like, okay, if we do well and we end up with a top 3 pick, they're probably going to draft a guy to take my job.
Okay, I'll throw one more thing out there, and then Alex, let's hear your thoughts on the in-season tournament. If you win the damn thing, you get one tamper. You get one. You get to do one tamper.
Now this I fuck with. I agree with this. This player
that helps
empowerment.
Everybody. Yeah. All right, Alex, what do you think about the in-season tournament?
I think it's, it's cool. I mean, I was more excited to watch games last night than I normally am. I mean, I'm always like a baseline level of cool, I get to watch basketball tonight. But last night I was like, ooh, I get to watch in-season tournament games. Let's turn these on, flip around the league for a little bit. And tonight, there's not it. Like, the NBA did its job. Like, hats off to Adam Silver, because today, when I checked the NBA app to see what games were on tonight, and I saw they weren't in-season tournament games, I was like, aw. I was a little bit bummed. But I think, like, I think if we try to make it, if we go into it with the expectation that it's going to be like this thing that people really, really show out for, like teams are just like, we have to win the in-season tournament, I think we'll probably be a little bit disappointed. That being said, if we go into it with just the peripheral vision of, okay, these guys are going to try a little bit harder because there is more money on the line. Like, I think it's like a game show. It's like watching people play Survivor, but they're playing basketball. It's like you're watching them try to win a game so that they can make money. Like, you try to win Survivor so you can get $1 million. I think if we try to make it something that it's not, like, how does this impact LeBron's legacy now that he's won an in-season tournament? I think we're barking up the wrong tree. I think we should be like, oh, Quentin Grimes is fighting to get another $1 million on top of his, like, $10 million contract. It's like, if we just take it for what it is, it's cool. But if we try to make it this thing that's like, how much does this add to somebody's legacy? Like, which teams have the best shot at winning the in-season tournament? It's like, I think it's going to be something where, like, anyone has a shot, because it just kind of depends on, do your players take it seriously or not? How much does your team actually care? Like, do you have a ton of players who are really going to be trying to win? And ultimately, I think, like, trying to figure out if the answer is draft compensation to make teams and players care about it more. I think the only way that you're going to make them care about it more is if more money is on the line. Like, that's it. Yeah. I genuinely think that's the only thing. Everything else, I don't think they really care about.
So I'm trying to zoom out on the timeline here. Alex, you just sprayed some WD-40 on my brain. Sparks are flying out. The gears are starting to spin. I am preemptively obsessed with the player or the coach who 15 years from now exclusively dominates in the in-season tournament and fucking sucks everywhere else. Like, there's gonna be a guy eventually, again, either on the bench or on the court, who it's like
in-season merchant.
Yeah, no, literally though, right? Where between November and December, like, he locks in and he'll average like 37 a game, or like this coach just, they'll flash a graphic, right? It's the coach's 7th time in the in-season tournament, and they'll be like, whatever the record would be, like, he's 23-2 in the in-season tournament. It's like, you don't want to go up. You don't want to be in this guy's group. You know what I mean? When it comes out, I can't wait. Rudy, I think that guy, that coach, that player, that's going to be our guy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it has to be, because, like, on the one hand, yeah, making it about, like, legacy and narratives and this, that, and the third are traditional basketball angles. It's a little lame, but also kind of poking fun at that and almost satirizing it a bit. Right. Where it's like, you know what?
Right.
Fuck yeah. What does this mean for Brad Stevens Jr.'s legacy?
Right.
So one thing I will say that I think is important about it. So every NBA season, we have the underlying current, like, storylines. Like, the stuff that we go into this season, like last night, here's a specific example. Last night was Klay Thompson's first game against the Warriors. And they made sure that his first game back was an in-season tournament game. So it had extra stakes. Not only was it Klay's first game back, but his first game back was an in-season tournament game. So to me, it is not what can the in-season tournament be in and of itself. It is what can the in-season tournament add to what already exists in the NBA? What are the extra layers on top of things? And I was like already excited, like, oh, cool, Clay's going to go against the Warriors. Like, there's not bad blood, but there might be. But then now it's like, oh, there's something on the line. Like, we're in the group stage of the in-season tournament now. It's like, cool, that's an added layer that makes me, I was already interested in this game. Now I'm even more interested in it.
I'm glad you brought up the group stage, because I do think that is one thing I would change about the in-season tournament, is the formatting of the groups. I don't agree with the random pulling. I don't agree with the way that it's not really advertised very much or marketed much at all, where it's like, all right, so these teams in this small group are competing against each other even when not facing each other directly. They're trying to advance the most. Like, it's very European style, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But I feel like if it was slightly more Americanized, it would resonate with us a little bit more, where it's like, okay, the groups are the divisions every year. That incentivizes rivalry. It's also geographically, associated, which enhances the element of rivalry a little bit more. Like, if I could just count on the Grizzlies facing the Pelicans twice in every in-season tournament group stage, that would be super cool. Or once, whatever. I don't know how all the logistics of it got to work. But it's like, if you got to just go through your whole division once, and then the best of that group advances into like a bracket, I would prefer that strongly over just like, oh yeah, there's one group that's really deep for no fucking reason because it's random, and then there's another group that's really shallow for no fucking reason because it's fucking random. Like, give us some more meaning, and I can watch it more easily. Otherwise, it's just basketball.
I think you're right. But it's kind of like with the World Cup, like how fun it is when they pull those groups and you figure out who the group of death is. You know what I mean? Every 4 years, the World Cup comes around and there's a stamp, group of death. And I don't really know if we have that this year, to be honest with you. Gun to my head, I couldn't even tell you all the teams.
It's the Warriors,
Pistons,
Nuggets, Grizzlies, Mavericks group. I think
that's
those
nasty.
all the I think there's maybe one more team. But yeah, it's a stupidly deep group.
So this is now it's all coming to light. Rudy is sour grapes over the fact that his favorite team is playing in the fucking hardest group. That's what this is about.
There it is.
Exactly. I'm thirsting for a banner in FedEx, even if it's just an in-season tournament banner.
Who's in the Grizzlies division? Because I'm pretty sure their division is still pretty
it's the
hard.
Mavericks, the Pelicans, the Rockets, the Spurs.
The Mavericks are in it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that sucks, but
divisions in basketball also don't matter at all.
Yeah,
They're
ever
not
since
real.
the playoff seeding changed to be just straight seeds and not division winners, it doesn't matter at all, which I like the meritocracy element of it, but at the same time, it's way more fun to have little sports quirks like that. So I'm in favor of bringing back division winners as playoff locks, especially with a play-in tournament being a thing now. It's like, yeah, there's room for wiggly weirdness.
You can miss me with that shit. I'm good on that.
I think, Jacob, your point about how you kind of need a little bit of time for it to marinate and to like, because like we did the same thing with the play-in tournament. And the play-in tournament, I think, was great for a whole, slew of other reasons. With the in-season tournament, we talk about wanting rivalries and stuff, and especially in the East right now, like I think there's a lot of good rivalries brewing in the East. Like I think Knicks and Pacers is probably going to be a pretty good one. Like there's like 4 or 5 East teams that just hate each other. Like there is clearly bad. Like, did you guys see Giannis go to high five Jaylen Brown in the middle of the game?
Yes.
And he just hits him with one of these. Like these teams don't like each other. Like the top 5 teams in the East hate each other. Probably 6. Like Knicks, Sixers, Celtics, Bucks, Heat, and Pacers now. It's like those teams all are beefing just constantly. And so I think with the in-season tournament, it's going to be fun, especially with like the randomness of the group stage. It's going to be nice because some teams that have those rivalries some years, we're going to be like, oh, the Celtics, the Sixers, and the Knicks are all in the same group. And we're going to be like, that's like the group of death. Like that's going to be so much fun to watch. Like these teams have to, not just beat each other, but like with the point system, you have to beat the crap out of the other team. Like you're not just trying to beat them by like 5 or 6 points. You're trying to beat them by 50 because you get more points for that. And I think that, like you said, Jacob, like 3 years from now, we're going to have situations where like, oh yeah, the Celtics and the Knicks are in the same group this year. Remember when the Celtics beat the Knicks by 60 points because they needed to, stat pad in the group stage? It's like stuff like that will start to build on itself over time, and we'll have stuff like that makes it even more interesting.
Do we think that the Pistons losing to the Heat, the Heat losing to themselves against the Pistons is probably the most historic in-season tournament thing so far?
I just want to say, Rudy, that's the second time that you framed it like the fucking Pistons are in a wheelchair playing that game. They still ran the most perfect out-of-bounds play imaginable to take the lead in the first place with like a second left on the clock. So even if Eric Spoelstra didn't have okay, look, in an age of hyperbole, I always try not to say this thing is the craziest thing you've ever seen in your life, because the truth is that's usually not the case, right? I'm telling you right now, the Pistons will never win a game like that ever again, because it relied on two things happening. One, JB Bickerstaff drawing up and the Pistons executing, again, a flawless out-of-bounds play, a lob from Cade to Jalen Duren, right? And then the other piece of this, and this is why it will never happen again, is Eric Spoelstra just having an all-time boneheaded moment, calling a timeout when they did not actually have a timeout. So the Pistons rightfully won that game. It just helped that Eric Spoelstra pooped his pants at the worst possible time.
I can count on you to back your Pistons. It's just important for me to frame it as such, as there has to be more than one perspective on this podcast. We got 4 talking heads here. Someone has to be the dedicated hater. So, unfortunately, that's just my job right now.
I hate that fucking team more than anybody else here.
Yeah.
Leave that to me, Rudy. I got it. When they deserve it, I got it.
I just, I'm eager for the next NBA game that closes in a technical foul free throw for the win. Like, I think we're not going to see that for at least next season.
I couldn't even believe that. I mean, obviously it was a great play call, but also there's 1 second on the clock. You should probably anticipate a lob a little bit, but it was just the most open lob ever.
And the pass was flawless. Like
right.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, so I was telling you guys, I had a Cooper flag up on the main TV, and I relegated the Pistons down to my phone. And I'm like the SpongeBob meme. I got one eye on my phone and one eye on Cooper flag doing dark magic shit. And this speaks volumes to my chimp brain. I guess if it was expected that they might run a lob, I thought I was watching the fucking Globetrotters playing the Washington Generals. It was the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, and Tyler Hero had 40. He tried to win that game. Unfortunately for him, he sucks as hell. And so it didn't happen. And Eric Spoelstra pooped his pants in Detroit. It happened. That was a real thing that happened.
Well, speaking of poop, let's get into the segment where we check in on the standings. I'm calling it What Stands Out. And we're starting off with the East, and we're starting off with Jacob's take. His conference is that the East overall just stinks. It's a poopy conference.
Yeah. I don't know what the record is since I last saw it, because it's been like 3 or 4 days, but I know that the West win percentage versus Eastern teams right now is like in the high 60s. As of right now, the Indiana Pacers, let me pull up the standings real quick just to make sure I'm not talking out of my ass here, but I'm pretty sure they just won their 5th game, now the Magic. Okay, wow, actually 5 teams are 500 now, but it took quite a while, and up until 3 days ago, only 2 teams were above 500. The Knicks have been pretty disappointing. Karl Anthony Towns has been great on the offensive end of the floor. However, his defense has been incredibly abysmal. I think opponents are shooting like 90% at the basket against him, which is a comically bad percentage. I think there are probably plenty of guards in the league who pose a bigger threat protecting the rim than that. Indiana, Tyrese Halliburton's really been stumbling out of the gate. And then in the East, there's like a shitload of teams that have these awful records that aren't even really that far out of it. Like we were talking about, we did a Bucks video the other day where I was looking at their place in the standings, and it's like, yeah, they're now the 12th seed because they just got a win yesterday. I don't remember who they were playing. but they got a win against them, and they are now 3-8. They're only a couple of spots, like 2 games away from being right back in the playoff picture, as ugly as that start has been. Philadelphia not that far behind. So, yeah, this conference is wide open right now, pretty much after the top 2 teams. And I have no fucking idea how the standings are going to go. I imagine the teams towards the bottom that seem like they should be better than they are right now will slowly creep up, and teams like the Nets and the Pistons and Hawks might drop a little bit. But as of right now, dude, the East is looking like the Celtics and Cavs are the only team that's going to do anything. I would give New York and Philly a shot to get back into that conversation. I'm almost fully out on the Bucks at this point. But yeah, the East is looking like the playoff picture is just going to be some shit ass teams, especially when you contrast that to the West, where as of right now, there are 10 teams that are 500 and above, and the Mavericks and Spurs at 11 and 12 are just 1 game off of being above 500 and well as the 11 and 12th seed. So it's not necessarily a surprise that the West is better than the East. Historically, that is almost always the case, but I really felt like this year going into it, things should be more balanced, because I feel like the Knicks got better and the Sixers got better, so at least the top end talent would be overwhelming. But we only have 2 teams at the top right now. One of them is one I didn't even expect to be that great.
So let's put on our devil's advocate hat for just a second. You know, when you watch Big Ten basketball or you watch Big 12 football and you look in the middle of the standings, you're going to see a lot of teams that are like 7-5 and 8-4 in like football, and then basketball, you know, whatever the record has to be. And what it always comes down to is conference play. And once they start playing each other, the conference just eats itself alive, because every team is just like win, loss, like they just beat each other up. That's what it is. So what I'm wondering here is, and I don't know if we can pull these numbers, you know, offhand, but are Eastern Conference teams just beating each other right now? And so record-wise, it's, you know, they're kind of like, but it's actually because of how competitive each team is, and they just keep playing each other. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, as I pointed out about their record when the East teams have been playing West teams, that hasn't gone well. But also, I feel like what seemed like would be a clearer hierarchy standing wise hasn't really been the case. Like teams like the Nets and the Pistons and the Hawks are looking just as good as teams like, or better than teams like the Bucks and the Sixers, and like just as good as some of the higher seeded teams right now, like the Knicks and the Magic and the Pacers. Like there are a lot of teams that are managing to hang around as of right now, where I think they should start getting washed out soon. The fact that since I last looked at the standings, two more teams have joined as above 500 or 500 or above. They're actually the Pacers, Knicks, and Magic are all at 500. But yeah, I think the East it's a little bit of competitiveness, but I was expecting at least a more top heavy conference, while the West is more. What am I looking at? What am I trying to say? Yeah.
So, okay. So what you were saying was, if you look at the West versus the East, they're kicking the shit out of them, which wasn't quite the point so my point was, what happens when the East plays the East? 58 and 58. Well, when the West plays the West, they're 57 and 57. So
I'm pretty sure
that's just like inevitable.
Wouldn't it
by
always
math.
say 500?
Yeah.
When it's East versus East.
Oh, I guess you're right. No, yeah, you're right. It would be 500. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I had to pull up this stat page in order for us to learn that.
Nice.
That
So
would
I
not
was
have
right.
computed. That would not have computed.
The West is kicking the shit out of the East, 15-34.
Well,
that's wild.
Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make is, has the East just been playing the East more to start the season?
Yes,
I mean,
but only by a factor of 20%.
Which is what, like 3 games at this point? 5 games at this point?
Yeah,
9. Yeah, so there you go. So in inconclusive data. But yeah, the West is better. I'm not disputing that the West is better. Because I keep getting motherfucking emails about this. Nick, why is the East so bad? I don't fucking know. I don't think it's that bad. Like, team-wise, like, I don't know. Like, yes, Jacob, to your point, the disparity at the top is definitely such that you're what the hell is going on? But, like, what am I supposed to say, that the Knicks are bad? I would be lying if I said that the Knicks are bad. I don't think the Sixers are bad either. But I think it's just kind of like, so like, which is it? We can't overreact. We should not overreact at the beginning of the season, or the East is shit ass as fuck and we should hate them and we should relegate them to like China or something. Like, which one is it? Which, are we overreacting, or is that just what it should be?
It's more just an observation as of right now. I'm not too concerned. Like I said earlier, of the teams that I expected to be hovering at the top, the one that I am actually out on just early on is Milwaukee. And Philly and New York should be fine. New York, I'm a little worried about because Mikal Bridges' defense has not been as good as you would like it to be. And previously, what I mentioned, Cat's horrible rim protection. It's bad to a point where I don't know if they're going to be able to make up for it with perimeter defenders. And it would be very funny to me if they just went right back to, we have to play Cat at the 4 because he's just incapable of defending the paint, which is possible. I think they might close with that lineup a lot when Mitchell Robinson's back.
So to start the season, Rudy and I planted our flags on the, hey, wouldn't it be funny if everybody's right and Mikal Bridges' jump shot sucks, and then like one game later it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't actually suck. Has it still been bad? What's going on? Are Rudy and I right?
I think his jump shot's been fine.
Well.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
Damn it.
The problem has been
he's like
his
above
defense.
40% from 3.
His defense has just been. I don't think it's above.
Timeout. I'm hallucinating.
Thought it was better than
he
that.
is not shooting well lately.
Rudy.
Last I checked, he was good.
Heyo.
He looks bad right now.
Our future on Mikal Bridges being broken
this is
looking
the
nice.
worst part about talking about the season at the very start, because shit can just like stats can change dramatically over 2 days.
Yeah.
Damn data.
Yeah, because like over the first like 5 games of the season, I'm pretty sure he was shooting like fine. But
I mean, his 3-point percentage is bad, but he is shooting 14% better on 2s than he did last year.
Is Mikal Bridges a guy that you've made a video on, Alex? That's escaping me right now. Like as an individual.
Yeah.
What about RJ Barrett? You ever got a Star J video out? We brought him up last podcast.
I have an interesting stat though. If I'm not sure, are you going with the like RJ's better than Mikal thing?
I am, but please get your stat off first.
The first 6 games of the season, Mikal was shooting on 6.5 attempts, 38.5% from 3. Over the last 4 games of the season, there's been 10 games played. He is attempting the same number of threes and shooting 19.2% from 3. So basically what I'm saying is, and I think this is especially true for 3-point percentage, somebody posted a chart that basically was like, this is the stats that like become meaningful after this many games, and this is how many games you have to wait before they're actually meaningful. And I think 3-point percentage was the one that like takes the longest to level out. I think it's like 30 games or something like that. So, we have to be prisoners of the moment because of the nature of what we do, where like, yes, we have to look at 3-point percentages 10 games in and be like, oh man, he's shooting 30% from 3. He sucks. And it's like, well, by game 30, it'll like the law of averages. It's called the law of averages for a reason. It's like, that'll probably level out.
So Rudy, do you want to cash out? You want to get out of the casino, or do you want to let this thing ride?
I don't know, man. If I can break even, I'm probably gonna get out, because I would like to see the Knicks succeed, and like spiritually, as a basketball fan, I don't like having inner conflict. Like this past Sunday, right? I had Anthony Simons and Scottie Pippen Jr. on my fantasy team, and intuitively, Anthony Simons is a much better player and normally puts up bigger numbers, especially in fantasy, than Scottie Pippen Jr. But that's not been the case this season, and the Blazers were playing the Grizzlies, so I had to put the Grizzlies in the starting lineup, despite Anthony projecting to be the better choice. Ended up not panning out that way. He had like negative points at halftime or some crap like that. I was very, very happy with that choice, but I'm not a betting man, so I'm a coward. I'm breaking even. I'm cashing out if that's the case, but right now, 30%.
It's not going to go lower than that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go lower than that. So it's probably I might profit. We need to create an index where we can actually trade these things and somehow profit.
Yeah.
Where's like the NFT based on the real time stats? Give me that scam, please. Speaking of New York, though, we talked about the 500 teams in the East. The Nets are the next team down, and 2 of their wins of their 5 are against the Grizzlies. But they do look kind of terrible. Cam Thomas, net rating real bad, but box score real good. They should be tanking unless they're trading for Giannis. Alex, I believe you had some thoughts on the Nets, unless,
I mean, I didn't really have a ton of thoughts, honestly. I certainly don't have 5 minutes on like the Nets being a mediocre, occasionally pretending to be good team. I mean, Cam Thomas is, depending on who you ask and what kind of person you are, like, well, not what kind of person you are, but what you enjoy watching from a basketball player, like, very entertaining player, in my opinion. Some people have, Matt, co-host of the Media Pass, does not agree. He can't stand Cam Thomas. But like, it's just weird because, and I guess I hallucinated this, but for some reason in my head, I had this idea that the Nets had a stretch last year where they were like a deceptively good team, or at least just like a neutral team. And so I feel like the Nets are just, we're going to have another one of those situations where I've also been told, how do you guys say, we might have to cut this out. So I've been saying the word, we're getting off the rails here because I don't have 5 minutes of things to say about the Nets. I've been told that I've been saying the word situation wrong my entire life. And I think I said it right there, but I've always said situation.
It's just a thing you say. I guess not. I mean, it's not grammatically right. Like it's not, right, quote unquote, but it's like, what you're saying.
Like, I'm going to understand you when you say situation, but I don't know. For my dialect personally, I definitely hit the T really hard in situation.
Okay,
very
so
Kim Possible coded. What's the sitch?
The reason this is of any significance is because I had a commenter on one of my videos who relentlessly harassed me about this until, instead of learning how to say it the right way, which I can say it the right way now, I caught myself slipping a second ago. Instead of learning how to say it the right way and just saying it the right way, I have stopped using the word situation in my videos entirely. I've just found synonyms for it. Scenario, predicament.
Scenario. Mm-hmm.
Conundrum.
Exactly.
Scene. In this instance,
that's another good one.
Cam Thomas, truly a tank commander. Very much enjoying having him on my fantasy team. I tuned in to see him play because he's on my fantasy team, and I had a lot riding on his performance. And man, just watching Cam Thomas during critical minutes of the second half of the fourth quarter of the game, that dude walks a lot. He is only worried when he has the ball in his hands. Like, that dude is out there chilling unless he gets the ball. It was very funny. I had no idea he was exactly that type of player. I knew people didn't like him for one reason or another, but I watched him for 7 minutes straight of basketball, and I definitely saw him walk more than anything else.
I've got a couple that he's one of those guys who just, like, he's out there to score the basketball. They've clearly just told him, like, you know what, we're not trying to win games. Walk all you want, whatever. I do want to shout out some more, I don't want to say serious basketball players, but guys who probably have a bit more rounded profiles as players. Dennis Schroeder is averaging almost 20 points per game this season on ridiculous shooting. He's shooting 47% from 3 on 6.5 attempts a night. Cam Johnson is kind of looking more like the Cam Johnson that we got used to when he was in Phoenix, to the point that I think, like, some team will probably make a move for him at some point. He's shooting 38.6% from 3 on 8 attempts per night. I think that's some of the, like, that's upper end volume and upper end efficiency for that volume. So, And then Nick Claxton, I have him in fantasy, and he's been a monster in fantasy on a nightly basis.
Really? He's not been playing, like, starters minutes, I don't think, because he's been recovering from an injury. So that surprises me a little bit.
Those assist totals are nice. 2.6, along with 2 stocks, only 1 turnover.
What are his? Can you scroll the minutes?
Yeah, it's
it doesn't matter in fantasy. It matters as stats.
Yeah, it's all about packing that box score.
Well, that was my point, is that he just doesn't have a lot of minutes to pack the box score.
Yeah, but those minutes are coming up now. I reckon he was just like easing back from an injury.
Yeah,
we see 27, 28, 32, 32. Yeah, putting up the numbers. Nick Claxton was a huge like Grizzlies Twitter target for us. It's like, oh, we need a center. Go get Nick Claxton. But it's like I'm not willing to pay the price for Nick Claxton, frankly.
I think, you know what I see using my crystal ball? You know what I see in Nick Claxton's future? You know, there was about 7 years where everybody fucking talked about, hey, Miles Turner, this guy might get traded. Keep an eye on Miles Turner. Is Nick Claxton, because you talk about Grizzlies fans, Pistons fans have been there too. I'm damn sure Bulls fans have been there. I know for a fact. Thunder fans might be there right now, by the way, with no Hartenstein and with no Chet Holmgren. Is Nick Claxton destined to be the new, hey, watch out for this guy, he might be on the market, and then he never leaves, he's just in Brooklyn forever?
I don't think it's destiny. I think you're tapping into the current zeitgeist. I think Miles Turner fell off and Nick Claxton stepped up. We're here. This is the cultural moment we live in.
This is comparable because the reason everyone was all over Miles Turner is because of his shooting ability.
I don't give a fuck about that. I'm talking about the principle. The principle of like the guy who's the new guy on the block that everybody always talks about is, I don't care about who they are as players. It could be a fucking point guard that everybody's like, I think we're going to trade for this guy. And then this other fan base is like, no, it's actually going to be us. And then nobody does. And he's just there forever. That's Miles Turner. And it sounds like maybe Nick Claxton.
I can see that.
Yeah.
He's young and like he fits that same age threshold when he was on Indiana, where it was like, he's not old yet, but he's also not so young that we're like, he's going to get so much better. But also, he could theoretically fit our timeline when we're back to being pretty good again. So we'd rather just hold on to him.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happened with Miles, where Miles was there for the Paul George era. They sucked a little bit. Everyone was like, hey, do you trade this guy? But he's not that old. Maybe you don't. And then now he's here for the Tyrese Halliburton era.
Boom.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
And the bridge here, Cooper Flag.
Yeah.
Cooper Flag in Brooklyn would move mountains.
I would fucking hate that, just for posterity. I just want to put that out there. I would hate that.
Chicago has needed a superstar for a very long time. That's all I'm going to say. I have needed Chicago to have a superstar for a very long time. Literally my entire time as a fan.
You have the hometown kid. He's a rookie right now.
You literally have the MVP.
Not me, motherfucker. I became a Bulls fan in 2012, 2013.
Oh.
Right.
Wait,
after
why did
he
it take
tore
that
his
long?
ACL.
He was born in 2010.
Me?
Yeah.
You were born in like the 80s, Jacob. What are you talking about?
Everybody knows Jacob has kids.
I was born February 29th, 2000. Thank you.
Goodness.
Thank you.
You're such a special little leap year baby.
Leap day, baby, but that's okay.
Leap day, leap year. Nick, how about them Pistons? Any other words besides, oh boy, we beat the Heat?
Yeah, I don't want every time that the shoot around happens that, you know, I just beat a dead horse and and derail every conversation that I can and shoehorn in my favorite team and make graphics up specifically for my favorite team. I'm not saying anything. I'm just, you know, hypothetically, I wouldn't want to do that. No, I mean, I think it's clear that JB, like, the culture that he's building is like a real tangible thing. And every night that you turn the Pistons on, it's like, they might win this game. Like, the night that we're taping this, they're playing Milwaukee on the second night of a back-to-back. Dog, they opened as 10-point favorites against Milwaukee. Potentially no Dame, potentially no Giannis. That's why, right? But like, and I think it ended up getting closed down to like 5.5 points. But still, we're 5.5. What the hell's going on here? So, yeah, we haven't beaten the Heat since like the Obama administration. Like, straight up. So that's cool to beat them, even if Jimmy wasn't playing. I don't know. I you know, Cade's a triple-double machine. You know, Malik Beasley hitting his shots. Tim Hardaway Jr. almost died. That was scary. Guess he's going to be fine. And then Malik Beasley slammed his head into Jovic's face. And all I can really say is that Jovic's nose wasn't not broken. It certainly wasn't not broken, and that's definitely how a nose was supposed to look, because blood is definitely supposed to come out of your nose, and the bridge of your nose is supposed to be crooked. So that was funny to see. And yeah, the Pistons are awesome, and this is so it took us, by the time we got to 5 wins last year, it was almost February.
Oh my God. Jesus. And that's after a 2-0 start.
Yeah. So I have nothing to complain about, and we can leave it at that.
You brought up the Bucks, and it brought up a point of curiosity with me for them. I realize they don't have their own draft pick this year, but under the typical resource you use to figure out this type of stuff, Fanspo, on their page of future draft picks that they have, it says that they have it, but it's protected 1 through 4 for one team and 5 through 30 for the other team. So they don't have it. There's no other pick available unless the league expands right now and the Bucks win the championship. They're not getting their own first-round pick this year. So they really have zero incentive to tank. Do we think a Giannis or Dame trade is actually plausible this season?
Within the next 365 days, yes, but in the middle of the season, that would be like lightning fast pacing, and like trades like that just don't get facilitated like that. But like in the next year, yeah,
they'd have to show like no signs of improvement over the next 20 games for that to even be really on the table.
I think we're gonna like figure out what their next step is once Chris comes back. Because if Chris comes back and they just continue to look awful, then yeah, I think they probably shut down whoever they need to shut down and are like, all right, it's AJ Johnson, Andre Jackson, Marshawn Beauchamp time. Like, see what happens.
Okay, wait. Oh my God. It's happening. Let me get hold on. I gotta get my crystal ball back out. Hold on. I'm looking into the future. It's June of 2025. Technically, it would be May when the draft lottery happens, but the Bucks have already secured the number 1 pick in the draft after missing the playoffs in shocking fashion. Or better yet, maybe they trade Giannis and this is how they get the first pick. But either way, the Milwaukee Bucks end up with the first pick in the draft. Much like in 2019 when the New Orleans Pelicans had like a 5% chance at getting the first pick in the draft, and somehow they did it. They drafted Zion Williamson, and the conspiracy out there was because Anthony Davis was on his way out. Gail Benson couldn't renew the lease at Smoothie King Center. The NBA wants a franchise in New Orleans. It's too profitable. The market is simply too profitable. What if we gave them the most budding prospect that we've seen since LeBron James and Zion Williamson? And that's exactly what happened. I'm saying all this just to say, what if Cooper Flag goes to Milwaukee? What about that? And then they lose Giannis, and then they just like start shit over, and they have Cooper Flag. What about that?
I'm all for it. Fuck it. Let them go.
The scenario I thought you were originally about to pose was, what if they just suck but don't trade them, and then they get the first pick, and they're like, you know what?
Here's the thing, though.
Cooper Flag first. You know, we got a big 3 now.
Here's the thing, that they, even if they suck and manage to get into the lottery and manage to get the first overall pick, because of their current state with their pick,
you're right.
It goes to either Brooklyn or New Orleans. So they would have to do a trade with those teams, likely involving Giannis or Dame, in order to get their own rights back. So do you give up Giannis and or Dame for a guy like Cooper Flag, who everyone is saying is a generational prospect, this, that, and the third?
Or it's the Bulls, right? The Bulls get the first pick. Does John Horst call AK and he's like, do you want Giannis? Do you want Dame? Like, pick him. Pick whoever you want on the team. Pick him. We want the first pick. You know what I mean? Like, what if they just call whoever gets the first pick, and they're like, you can have Giannis Antetokounmpo if you just give us this pick? Who says no to that?
Man, I think it would depend on the context of the roster.
Okay, it's the Bulls. It's the Bulls.
Well, the Bulls, no. I don't think the Bulls are going to be able to put a good enough team around him. What's funny, specifically with the Bulls, he's actually said specifically he would like to play for the Bulls, and a lot of Bulls fans have held on to that for a very long time. Give him a glimmer of hope, but I don't know, that's an interesting thought, because like, how long of a prime does Giannis have? If you actually really believe in Cooper Flag, do you want to go with a decade of Cooper Flag or 4 years of Giannis?
They would also, this scenario 9 times out of 10, 25 times out of 30 involves hoeing Giannis in some point. And that would just be terrible business because the odds are is that, like, if it's Detroit, right? Giannis does not want to get sent to Detroit. So it would have to, it just doesn't really, like, if Brooklyn got it.
The right team has to have that pick. It has to be a team that could put a contender around him soon thereafter. Which obviously most teams that are going to be in the lottery, they probably can't. Maybe they could have the assets that they could flip that into a better roster, but that's about it.
So what you're saying is we got to look out for a 4-team deal involving the Pelicans, the Nets, the Bulls, and Milwaukee to send Cooper Flagg to Milwaukee, Giannis to either the Nets or the Pelicans or the Bulls, and then a bunch of other bullshit happening in between to make it all make sense.
My head hurts.
You think the Bulls or the Pelicans have more to trade than the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Oh yeah, they're gonna swoop in and just get everything.
Yeah, it's
fifth team in the deal. They're gonna get Cooper Flagg and Giannis somehow.
That actually brings up an interesting conversation because there's been a lot of Giannis OKC discourse. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about the idea of getting Giannis? Because I think there is an argument to be made that just sticking on the current path they're on is going to lead them somewhere good regardless. Why throw some huge wrench in it? I don't think there's much reason to believe SGA plays so much better next to Giannis than Dame does, other than obviously being a better defender. So especially, I'm personally very much in the camp, no shot you get Chet. Leave Chet the fuck out of this conversation.
Yeah, I my whole thing is I maybe discuss J-Dub. I am willing to have a discussion about that. Chet is pretty much off the table just because I think the type of player that Chet is like really important to have in today's NBA.
Injured?
Nailed him.
Go ahead.
Get his
hilarious.
ass.
Giannis is almost 30, and like he turns 30 in I think like a month. And not that he's like, on death's door or anything like that. It's like, he's still averaging 30 points per game on ridiculous efficiency. He's still an incredibly dominant player. I'm not saying Giannis is washed. I'm not saying he will be washed in the next 2 years or the next 3 years for that matter. I mean, there will come a point where Giannis will start to show signs of age, and that will create problems for whichever team he's on. And right now, Chet's hurt. It sucks. If you watch the injury, I don't think it has anything to do with Chet being like injury prone. He fell like out of the air and landed sideways on his hip. I think if that happens to probably 90% of human beings, everyone breaks their hip except for like LeBron. LeBron's the only one who wouldn't like fracture a bone from that.
Right, he's got the HGH implant with stem cells included.
Right. And then Chet's first injury was a very, very rare injury for basketball players. It's way more common in football. It was like the odds of that injury happening to him were very, very, very small. And he played like, how many games did he miss? I don't think he missed a single game.
82.
He missed,
He got all 82 last year.
Yeah.
So like the idea that Chet is injury prone and that being a reason to like, oh, well, I would trade Chet for Giannis because Giannis is actually healthy. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's if you're operating under like an entirely false pretense that Chet is somehow injury prone. It's like, if he was having a bunch of hamstring strains or like MCL, PCL strains or tearing ligaments, if he was like doing a J.K. Dobbins every year, then yeah,
Zion.
we could have some discussions about Chet being injury prone, but there's just not like accurate data to back that up. And I get we're gonna have people in the comments being like, "Whoa, he missed his entire rookie season with an injury. How can you say he's not injury prone? Oh, he just fractured his hip. How can you say he's not injury prone?" I'm like, yeah, that's if like you don't have any nuance behind your evaluation of these injuries. That's if you're just like seeing injury on the injury report and being like, oh, he's injury prone. It's like, no, he had something called a Lisfranc injury, which I'd say 95% of people don't even know what that is. And then the second one was he fell out of the air directly onto his hip. It's like those are abnormal occurrences. They are not hamstring strains, PCL strains, torn ligaments. It's not the same.
Yeah, well said. I'm surprised that isn't your your tight five for the intro. Just shut the fuck up about calling Chet Holmgren injury prone. Before we move on to the west side of what stands out, Nick, I do have one little note here. It says, ask Rudy the triple-double question.
Dog, I was thinking about you last night.
Oh.
I'm watching Cooper Flag, and I'm like falling in love, and I'm like, oh my God, he's so good, and so just good. And I look at the bottom ticker. I see Josh Hart has the Josh Hart special. He's got 12 points, like 11 rebounds, and fucking 14 assists. I'm like, there's the Josh Hart triple-double. There it is, right? And it's just piggybacking off of a conversation that you and I had like a week ago, where you're like, dude, I would watch a 5-minute compilation of a dude like Hezzy tweeting like no look Jason Williams shit, even if him actually shooting the shot was cut off. Like, I just want to see somebody do cool shit. So like, which version of a triple double is cooler to you, the Josh Hart special or the 38 points, 17 rebounds, and 12 assists?
That's a really good question. I love the quiet triple double.
Yeah,
because it feels like more niche. It makes me feel special for noticing it. I'm like, ooh, I'm a real fan. I like the triple tens. Give me a Rondo special, Give me one with steals just to see what happens. Like, that's fine and good. Everyone knows about LeBron getting a triple double in Game 7 of the 2016 whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, those moments are for everyone. The Ben Simmons, the Rajon Rondo, the Josh Hart, that feels like it's for me, and I like that.
It's the pocket knife triple double. It's the utility guy, right? That's just a scrappy guy who just like makes winning plays. Whereas there's not really a way to quantify this like in a fair way, because when Luka puts up a 50-point triple double and James Harden puts up a 50-point triple double, like that shit still rules. Like, it's awesome, but it's just more fun when it comes from like a scrappier dude like a Rajon Rondo or like a Josh Hart. There's not a right answer to this. I was just curious as a nice watcher.
I think for like superstar players, getting a triple double, especially the last 20 years, has become more and more commonplace to a point where it's not like that crazy. And like, also you have other ways of impacting the game with some crazy level of significance. Maybe it's just your scoring as a star player, but like a Josh Hart triple double, that's the equivalent of a superstar dropping a 50 piece.
Yeah.
That's a role player 50 piece.
So here's a question that kind of, Jacob, you just sprayed some WD-40 on my brain. Some sparks are flying out and the gears are spinning. Subconsciously, how much do you guys think about with how involved the triple double is in 2024 as opposed to 2004, right? When we look at the landscape of the stars in the league, the top 20 guys, their ability to produce a triple-double, subconsciously, how much do you think that matters to people? Do you get what I'm asking?
Mm-hmm. I feel like the Westbrook moment sort of shifted the zeitgeist in a very major way.
Right.
To where it made it significantly less substantial because there was just daily news coverage of Westbrook's latest triple-double, of his triple-double average, of his MVP despite, not being more than a 6 seed or what the fuck ever it was. Like, there was a lot of Russell Westbrook coverage that kind of beat the drum a little too hard, and for most people, I think that note runs sour.
Well, so you think you think the Russ stuff depreciated it?
I think if you're gonna buy into triple-double stock, now is the time. If you sell, you're losing money.
So you think you'd be buying low on it? See, because I'm kind of saying the opposite, where I think it's held in a higher regard because the movement that Russell Westbrook started.
I think it's held in a lower regard because especially the superstar players of today are the type of players who can so casually get one. Like, if the 3 best players in the NBA right now, Luka, Giannis, and Jokic, if you hear that any of them has a triple-double, especially Luka and Jokic, you're not like, whoa. You're just like, yeah, that dude can just do that. I think it's a lot of the, like, Russ obviously sparked some huge thing about it, but I also think the game was heading in a direction because of the versatility of modern players and the expectation of them doing a little bit of everything, where like it was also just going to happen more anyways, because like your best player is now going to be somebody who both scores a lot and passes quite a bit more often than not. And then we're also talking about the best players being 6'8" to 7 foot. So we're also very capable of grabbing rebounds. So I think that's just kind of the direction the game went. But obviously Russell Westbrook, here's what I would equate it to. The 3-point revolution was happening, but then the Warriors happened and it accelerated it. I think the triple-double thing was going to happen. Russell Westbrook happened, and then it accelerated it.
So my whole thing, I agree with what you said, Jacob. I think like the whole like Russell Westbrook ruined triple-doubles thing. I'm sorry. I roll my eyes at that. I'm like, what? If you don't think a triple-double is cool, like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry for you. That's like a you problem. You got to figure that out. With Russell Westbrook, it was like, it's one thing for him to just like get a triple-double. Like Jokic gets a triple-double and he's just like insanely talented, so we just know like, yeah, Jokic is going to get triple doubles. Giannis gets triple doubles, no one's surprised. James Harden gets triple doubles, Luka gets triple doubles, no one's surprised. But with Russ, it's like his triple doubles are held under a microscope for some reason. And to me, his triple doubles were like, yes, you can look at the rebounds and be like, well, they were boxing out for him to get rebounds. This was by design. Well, yeah, like, yes, that's already been like debunked, quote unquote, where it's like they wanted him to get the ball so that they could get out in transition because he is such a good playmaker in transition that they wanted him to get those rebounds. It was advantageous for them to get those rebounds. You know why other players aren't being boxed out for to get those rebounds? Because they're not as good playmakers in transition. So yes, it was by design. Like, yes, they were stat padding, but they were doing it because it had advantages for the team. And Russell Westbrook, it's like, Russell Westbrook was doing this. Like, we see Luka get a triple-double. How many threes? He probably had how many threes was he taking, et cetera, et cetera. Like Jokic, he, 30-point triple-double. He's taking a bunch of threes. Russell Westbrook was doing it. He couldn't shoot. He couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. He couldn't shoot for anything. And he was still averaging, 30-point triple-double. And I don't know. I had to get on my soapbox there and complain about the hate toward,
I could see the look on your face as we were talking about it. Like, he's got something to say.
It's just it's so tiring. It's like, we're still doing this. Like, it's 7 years later and we're still being like, oh, who cares about Russell Westbrook's triple doubles? He's like, he said it the best. If it was easy, everyone would do it, but they don't.
Also, the thing that you mentioned about the like schematically intentionally getting the ball in the hands of your best player quicker, especially because pace has become so elevated in recent years. I think that approach has also become more commonplace in how teams approach rebounding. So that also has elevated how many triple doubles we end up seeing. So I would, again, I'm going to draw this exact same comparison to those Warriors breaking out. Like, 3-point shooting was more of, not to the same degree it used to be earlier on, but more of a novelty where it doesn't happen that often. So each time it does, it feels a little bit more substantial. And then the Warriors happen, and then a team hitting 23s in a game is like, yeah, it's another day of the fucking week. So, someone have a superstar player having a triple double. I don't know. I'm curious what this, it's not worth delving into, but just like, how many, there might be a triple double a week, or at least one every 2 weeks out of a star player in the NBA these days. So I just think it's the increased volume that inherently is going to make it a little bit more devalued. That's just how it goes.
Well, yeah, no, you stole the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to point out. Go ahead, Alex.
We're looking at the act of the triple double, and to me, the triple double is the symptom, not the disease itself, quote unquote. I don't think the triple double is like what we should be focusing on. The triple double is just the result of the insane talent that exists. Everyone's like, oh, well, everyone gets triple doubles now. There's a reason, and it's because players are better now. Like, we're seeing some of the best talent that we've ever seen. It's like, yeah, guys back then, they probably, and also part of it is like the optimization of the game. You running your entire scheme through your best players, stuff like heliocentric systems, yada, yada, yada. That's part of it, but that is a byproduct of the game being optimized. My whole thing is like, a triple double is cool because it is a symbol of the talent that we get to watch. It's like a 50-point, people are like, well, who cares about a 30-point game anymore? And I'm like, that's the point. Like, we're numb to it because players are so good. It's like the 30-point game itself isn't necessarily, it's not necessarily something to write home about. But to me, it's like, it's cool, assuming it's an efficient 30-point game. That's kind of part of the equation here. It's like, you just got to watch somebody do something that's like incredibly hard to do and very fun to watch. And so I don't know. We just get too hung up on, like, I guess the triple-double is the result of the players being great, and we should appreciate that rather than being like, do triple-doubles even matter anymore?
I just want to, for transparency, I was not posing this, which, good job, Nick, for the prompt. This sparked some really good conversation. Thank you, guys. I was not saying that triple-doubles are stupid. I was just asking the way that I just want to make sure I wasn't framed.
I don't think anyone was saying, this is more just me, being on a soapbox. I don't think anyone was saying like triple-double bad. Except Rudy, maybe a little bit.
No, I just want to tap into this sentiment. To be clear, I don't believe triple-double bad, but I do think the cultural impact of the triple-double has severely lessened in the past 10 years. And a lot of that has to do with the media's coverage of Russell Westbrook's historic season. Not that it was bad, it is just what happened, And again, to Jacob's point, the volume is also like the less fun, super macro, nerdy side of this, where it's like a lot of these games that would be 9-9-9 are now 11-11-11, or fucking 22-7-7 can much more easily be 25-10-10, whatever, It's just the nature of the current state of the league. The triple-double is more frequent and thus less novel and thus less valuable, but it's not so much that I'm like triple-double bad. I still appreciate it. I just acknowledge the state of the triple doubles place,
Started this being like, hey, Rudy, which one of these things is more fun to watch? La 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 la. 15 minutes later, Alex is like, Rudy, I'm going to fucking kill you. Shut up.
Dude,
I'm
to
very
circle back
defensive of Russell Westbrook.
I want to circle back to your original question, though, because I do have a little bit of beef with myself regarding Josh Hart. I mentioned my fantasy team earlier, and I was tempted to not bring it up on the pod, but the door is open and I'm going to walk right through it. I had the most epic fantasy basketball battle maybe ever this week. And a lot of it came down to Ja Morant getting hurt because he's one of the 4 or 5 best players on my team. But I ended up losing to the highest scorer this week in my 8-team league. And I was the second highest scorer this week in my 8-team league. And the point differential between us was like 2.5 or 3 points. And my big L move, I talked about tuning into Cam Thomas. That was Saturday. I was like, okay, if Cam Thomas doesn't pop off, then I swap in either Anthony or Scottie Pippen tomorrow. And then that's my last chance to win this game. Naturally, Cam Thomas lets me down. I go with Scottie Pippen Jr. The Grizzlies wallop the Blazers, like just so bad that even Scottie Pippen Jr. is getting subbed out with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So I end up losing because of the Grizzlies' success, and that's an L I'm willing to take. I'm going to remember this L in fantasy basketball for the rest of my life, unfortunately. But the real L, the big choice that would have negated all of this point guard drama, is Josh Hart prior to his triple-double triple platinum Josh Hart special game. He had a pretty fucking solid night. One of his best nights of the year. He got like 33 fantasy points in our league. And then I locked that score in. The next game, he does the special thing. He gets 10 more points. If only I trusted myself and didn't lock in Josh Hart's pretty good game, banking on him having a great game on Sunday. Like, I literally went to bed being like, all right, do I lock in this score? No, I got to remember to trust myself tomorrow. And then fucking 16 hours later, I'm like, you know what? Josh Hart could fucking get hurt or something. I don't know. I'll just lock it in and hope Scottie Pippen does it for me. Sure fucking enough, it would have been the decision that won me the game and kept my undefeated fantasy basketball streak alive. And I'm really let down by that, frankly. That was what compelled me the most about the NBA this week. It was strictly my fantasy basketball team, frankly.
You know what's hilarious is that you were texting me trying to trade, and we're in a dynasty league. Rudy was texting me trying to make a trade, and he was like, which one of my and this is after you saying that you were having an undefeated season. Granted, we're like 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
You were like, which one of my players do you want for a pick? Like, he was selling after losing 1 week. And I was
the problem with it's because my injured reserve was just like flooded with health, and I was like, okay, if I want to lock in these scores, I got to make some moves. I got to drop guys, so I'm willing to offload fucking Shaden Sharp for a third or whatever, you know. I had injury problems. I do want to make a little bit of an audible though. We are a little high in the runtime this episode. We've had a lot of really nice in-depth discussions about the East. We are prepared to talk about the West, but I don't love this podcast running a full 2 hours in length. So
I don't either.
I'm very open to just kind of doing some closing thoughts on the East. I want to bring up the Cavs because we haven't yet. They're undefeated. They're playing the Sixers tonight, so they will likely remain undefeated. We should have a Cavaliers video going up on the Also Rusty Buckets channel prior to this releasing, but after this recording. Are the Cavs a real threat? We talked about it last week. Let's revisit it. They are still undefeated. What's going on?
I got to say something about the Cavs. And Cavs fans, I want you to know that I have the Cavs in the upper tier of contenders right now. So please do not take this the wrong way. There's been a lot of things that I think I'm going to have people angry at me in the comments for this episode, and this is probably one of them. The Cavs have beat some good teams so far. They've also beat some really bad teams. And we're going to get a clearer picture of the caliber of team that the Cavs are over these next few weeks. Like, I think they're going to beat the crap out of the zombie Sixers tonight. Let's be honest. Could be a trap game, but I'm not buying it. But
I think Embiid said he was going to play.
I saw a report before we started recording that he was out, but it could have changed. I don't know. So I'm not saying that the Cavs aren't like insanely. I think they are real contenders. Like they're a team that they pop up in the Eastern Conference Finals, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not going to be fun for whoever they see. That being said, their record could have some games in there where you're like, oh yeah, they played the Wizards a couple of times. I don't know if I know they played the Wizards at least once. Not what they're doing right now. I'm digging myself a hole. What they're doing right now is cool. Are they like a historically great team? That's what we're going to find out over the next coming games. Because, like, obviously right now they're on an 82-0 pace. They're not going to win 82 games. But, like, are they a 70-win team? Are they a 60? I posted the poll on my community page. I was like, how many games do you think the Cavs are going to win? Like 65-70, 60-65, 55-60? Like, that's a weird question to answer.
For posterity, I voted for the 55-60, and I was wrong in terms of your populace. I was outvoted. That was not the consensus.
What was the consensus? Do you remember?
So I think it was like 60-65.
Wow, locking in a 60-win season for the Cavs without LeBron, mind you, sounds so crazy. But sure enough,
I think they're a 60-win team.
Is that even if the 3-point shooting cools down? Because right now they're by far the most effective 3-point shooting team in the NBA, outside of maybe the Celtics. But the Celtics have a higher volume, so
they're also the most efficient 2-point shooting team too.
So I mean, let's say that they come down to being the fifth best shooting team when the season is said and done. Are they still this caliber?
I don't think they're going to. I think there's plenty of reason to believe they'll be one of the better shooting teams because after Mobley and Allen, they have shooters. They have a bunch of dudes who are very, very capable of shooting the ball. Like everybody in that rotation. And I was preemptively researching the Cavs for a video that you just mentioned earlier. And like, I'm being dead serious. Everybody besides for Mobley and Allen are good to great 3-point shooters in that rotation, and their rotation could potentially run 11 players deep.
Isaac Okoro, look at him, dude. Holy cow. I know it's low volume, but 48%. I mean, he improved last year, even though, yes, low volume, I know.
Career 35% shooter, but like you said, this year 48%. I wonder where physically on the court that is coming from. Is he like a
gotta be
corner?
Definitely corner.
Has to be.
Shooting. I can look. That's on cleaning the glass. Although I think I saw a tweet saying that he's like shooting the best he's ever shot above the break.
100% assisted percentage on his 3-pointers this year. 13 of 27 from there so far.
He has
all
about
13 on assist.
he has about a 50-50 frequency split on corner and non-corner, and he is shooting about the same on them. So might be a little coaching adjustment, because I know last year he took like half as many non-corner threes as he did corner threes. So Atkinson may be pulling some strings there, doing a little puppet.
The
mastering.
lizard, the reptilian shapeshifter of the NBA. Really the most valuable coach right now, other than the Grizzlies assistant, but that's something we can get into next week on the Western Conference edition of What Stands Out, something I've said exactly twice in this entire podcast. Nick, you have a burning question. I can see it.
I got an email from a guy. He was really fired up, and he was like, anybody who says that, 15 games into the season, anybody that says that Steve Kerr isn't the coach of the year doesn't watch hoops. And I kind of wanted to throw it up for the panel. Like, why would that not be Kenny Atkinson right now? Because I don't disagree that Steve Kerr would have a top 3 finish right now, but why would we immediately write off Kenny Atkinson for that?
We wouldn't.
Right. Not on this podcast.
Right.
No way.
Okay.
We love our shape-shifting reptilian person. Kenny
Silicon
Atkinson.
Valley Lizard is what you're going for, Rudy.
Yes,
Silicon
yes,
Valley
yes.
Lizard.
Yeah, no. Believe it or not, the shape-shifting like lizard conspiracy theory nonsense is like profoundly anti-Semitic for some reason. I haven't read into it deeply, but I know that it's like really bad.
Yeah,
we should
I was
actually
a little
not.
worried for a second.
I was
Damn
gonna
near
say,
every conspiracy.
I just didn't know if I would make it weird by saying this. We should probably look into his lineage to make sure he's not Jewish.
Right. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. And then if he isn't, then we're going to keep letting this fly. But also, if he is it grandfathered in? We've been making it for a while.
I don't think we get
just found
grandfathered in.
out-
I think we just make an apology tour. That'll just be the ISO for this podcast, is me being like, I'm sorry for allowing this.
Atkinson. That's not like a.
He went to a
St.
St. Anthony's, which is a Roman Catholic college prep school.
He
So
gave me an Italian vibe, but that's
Like
only
if-
a little bit different from a Jewish vibe. So.
Like, how does the last name thing work? Like, if your last name's Glassman, it's because your family used to like make Glassman. But
Yeah.
Atkinson, what was
he
he like,
used
a
to flip
dietitian?
protein shakes.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
What
was this-
nationality is the Atkinson last name? Or not, I guess ethnicity. Well, I don't. We're going to have
Leave
to cut
this
all this
in,
out.
Desmond. Desmond, leave all
Dude,
of this
cut
in.
this out. We got to cut this out.
It's 20 minutes of us being like, is Kenny Atkinson Jewish?
It's an English name. Atkinson is an English name.
Yeah. As a Jew myself, I gotta say, I feel like the Catholic college prep school, being his alma mater, is the real deal sealer.
Yeah.
I wouldn't send my child to a Roman Catholic school. So, but that is if I'm raising my child Jewish. We'll see. Tune in next week to figure out how I'm gonna raise my child.